All right. We are totally recording right now, I think. I think I pressed the button. I think it's working. I think we're gonna have some fun today. So you know how we do it, Nikki. We gotta just kind of get the shoulders into it. Ready? Come on out. All right, y'all. Welcome to our sort of monthly training session. If you're joining us and you have no idea what the heck's going on, I'm Cesar Cervantes. I'm the founder of Top Talks, and I'm essentially a speechwriter and speaker coach. I help folks land and deliver TEDx talks and keynote speeches. And we do a monthly sort of training education in the Facebook group, which is our public community. We've got over 11,000 people in that community now, and it's growing every day. And I'm just so excited today to have Nikki Groom, who's going to be deep diving into one of the most important assets that you will have as a speaker. And so that's your website, right? So the primary assets that we talk about through the program are your website, your speaker reel, your one pager and all the other things that come along with building those assets like headshots and your social media and what you're putting out there into the world. But the fact is that you have to have a very clear offer of what it is, what problem you're solving, and what outcomes your audience will receive, right? And also that you don't need to know who you're speaking to. Who is the person that's actually going to book you for your gig, right? That your audience and the person who's booking you may be completely different. And so you have to think about, communicating those things. But before we jump into all that, I just want to introduce to you Nikki. Nikki and I bumped into each other on Instagram because that's where you meet people. And she's amazing. I just was looking at her work, and I love that she specializes really in helping speakers. And also, she's just an expert in branding. And so, without further ado, join me in welcoming Nikki Grum. Nikki Grum.
Hello. And by the way, I thought you were joking about the dancing thing, so I absolutely love and was ready to ad lib with that. So fantastic. And I feel very, very welcomed. What a lovely community. So I am the CEO and founder of Raised Voices, and we are essentially a positioning brand strategy and messaging firm that specializes in positioning speakers for maximum impact through world-class websites that really allow you to lead and shape the future. So that's
Love
really
it.
what we're doing. And the way I like to describe it is essentially you choose what to speak up about. We help you make your message heard so that you can be the light you want to see.
I
So
love it.
that's the ethos and the principle behind Raised Voices. Um, Now, as we move into thinking about your website and some of those key components and essential elements, the one question I really want you to keep in mind is what do I want to be known for? What do I want to be known for? And I ask that because I guarantee that each one of you brings a unique mix of experiences and strengths, insights, and perspectives with the power to shape our collective future. But unless we know you for one thing, a specific reason, you will not stand out to anyone. It's not enough to say, I'm a leadership speaker. Why? Because there's a gazillion of those. It's not enough to say, I speak about personal development. Why? Because there are a gazillion of those speakers.
Hey,
So,
Nikki.
yeah,
Are you sharing screen right now?
not yet, but
Oh,
I'm
okay.
gonna be sharing just a
Oh,
bit.
cool.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure you got the tech. Okay, go. Proceed. Everything sounds so much better
proceed.
in your English accent. I'm
You
just like
know,
I'm
I
totally
do
hooked.
ride that wave. Yeah, and also apparently, if you wear glasses, having said that, I do. I promise you, I need these glasses, otherwise, I wouldn't be able to see any of you. Um, so it's yeah, as I say, we've really got to be thinking about what is your unique take, what is your unique understanding, what is your unique advantage, and that's how you need to be thinking about your website positioning, copy, and the site itself and layout. So people immediately get it. And even, I like to say, they feel this sense of urgency about hiring you or booking you to speak. So I want to start at the top of your website, and I'm going to share with you that's six, seven key elements you need to have at the top of your website in this order. So this is very specific. And I'm not screen sharing, but I will in just a minute because I'm going to share with you some examples of this. So, number one, your contact information. English category number one. Yes, you need to have your contact information. There is an excellent speaker out there. I highly recommend checking out what is putting out into the world. His name is David Avrin, and he talks about being ridiculously easy to do business with. And one of the first things that he teaches is, as a speaker, have your email and your phone number, or if you want to use a Google Voice number or a phone number that you feel comfortable using. Maybe it's I don't know, an assistant or something like that. Have something at the top of your site so we can immediately get in touch with you. It might be a little button that has us link straight to your contact form, but either way, that's what you want to lead with. It sounds so obvious, but so many people don't do it. So be ridiculously easy to do business with. So number one is your contact information. Number two is you. Again, I see so many speaker websites where it's like there's lots of writing and maybe there's kind of a cool background or a landscape or a seascape or something like that. We just really want to see you. And so I'm going to share with you a couple of examples of this. One of them, so here's one option, is to have a photograph. So here's a website. Her name is Alison Shapira. And you can see this gorgeous headshot picture of her at the top of the site. Why is this so important? Because yes, we see her URL. We know we're in the right place. We see her logo. We see her name. But now we feel connected to her because we actually see her. Here's a second thing that you might think about doing, having an actual video playing of you speaking. If you skip past this step, we're not going to have a true sense of what you're all about. So it's so critically important. So number one, contact information. Number two, you. And then I also want you to be thinking about, I describe it as your category of one. So what are the two or three words that immediately sum up what it is that you're all about? And you can see, if I can share the right screen, with Alison's example, she has speak with impact. So that's her category of one. That's what she's all about. With Dee Dee, you can see hers is all about everyday courage. So it's not just her name, but actually we're going that one level deeper and starting to think about, what do I uniquely bring to the table? What is my truth? What is my message? What do all of my experiences and all of my expertise, what are they leading me to? Here's another example here. Unlock what's possible. This is Milena Palmer at the Brainy Business, and she's all about using behavioral economics to help people unlock what's possible. And she has a little play on words here for your customers, for your teams. Another example, Lakita Clear, the engagement code. So you can see there's kind of two or three words. And the way I like to think about your favorite nonfiction self-help book. And it could be Atomic Habits, or it could be Let Them. That's a new one from Mel Robbins. It could be Dare to Lead. It's two or three words. And it immediately tells you what you're all about, and we don't have to guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of you already have that. If you do, I'd love to hear it and see in the comments, because it can be so powerful when those two or three words immediately just get us on the same page as you.
Yeah, so let's take a pause here real quick, Nikki. This is great stuff because
Yeah.
I want to make sure we're absorbing it all. So, all right, so first thing that came up was all right, how do you make yourself ridiculously easy to contact and really to book? Because I can tell you as a speaker, I have definitely been called in an emergency where somebody dropped out as a speaker, right? And was just like, "Hey, can you fill in?" And so as a speaker, I think that availability and like, okay, on your website, yes, I can book a call, but But what if I can't get on your calendar for 3 days? Is there some other way in which I can go like, oh wow, maybe I can just text this person, or text, Alex or Tim or Veronica or Elizabeth and say, oh, you're perfect for this. Are you available? I think that's huge. I think that's super important. So maybe that's the phone number or email address direct in addition to the book a call or something like that. I think that's great. And the second piece is, which I think is really smart. It's like, am I in the right place? So you right when you go to the hero image or right when you open, you know exactly what you're going to get. What is the heart of the message, the core of the message, the thing that you do better than everybody else.
Exactly. Yeah, you completely got it. And none of this is rocket science, right? But I share it because sometimes we just need a reminder that there are seven key elements, and they can be as simple as adding your contact information, or they can be as simple as swapping out that random photograph, or maybe it's a photograph of other people, and actually just allowing yourself to shine and having a really great picture of you or a video of you speaking in the background. So we're grounded. We know, oh, we're in the right place. We're here to learn about Alex. We're here to learn about Tim. We're here to learn about Elizabeth. And
Yeah.
yeah, and we can kind of go from there.
The other thing I want to say, Nikki, is like if you're in a spot where you don't have the website yet, right? One of the
Mm,
things that can start, and I remember this, like, I remember being in this spot. I was thinking like of all the pieces that had to come together, and I wanted the website to look amazing, and I was comparing it to speakers that had been, doing this for 20, 25 years plus. And you start to get overwhelmed by all of the things that could be in there and all of
mm,
the color scheme and like a full website that has the podcast and the like for those of you who are at the beginning or even if you're further along, I want you to think about the core elements. You really could have a one-page website, right? That just has who are you? What do you speak on? How do I contact you? What problem do you solve? What are the outcomes going to be after we book you? Like, just think of yourself in that position of, booking. What do I need to know? So I just want to frame that if you're not further along, if you're at the very beginning, this is for you.
I also think thank you so much for saying that, because I also think it's really important to give ourselves permission to be a work in progress and to let our online presence even be this kind of evolution. So we can do the best we can with what we have right now and what we think we want to lead with, and then kind of put it out there and test it and see what people are resonating with. I worked with a client recently, and kind of that three-word thing we came up with was build people power. And he said he had his assistant send out a
Mm.
pitch and the person responded almost immediately. So he was like, I think we've got a good one here. That's a great test of, is this something that people can actually get on board with? So don't feel like you have to have it all figured out, but maybe put something together, go with your gut, and then test it. Share it with some people that you trust, share it in the Facebook community, and kind of get people's feedback. And don't be afraid as well to direct that feedback, because you don't kind of want a clamor of voices, but ask very specific questions that get you the feedback that you need, such as, does it make sense what I speak about to you? Would you be excited to hire me if this was your primary challenge, and that kind of thing? Um, okay, cool. Let me move on. So we talked about that credibility statement, that category of one. That also pairs with number four, which is your credibility statement. So you have the two, three words, then right underneath it, you have number four, which is your credibility statement. And so what that is really summing up, ideally in about one sentence, what it is that you're doing and what are the expected outcomes. So if somebody hires you to deliver a speech, they know, oh, this person's going to solve my challenges. They get it. They know what it's all about. Again, I'll share some examples in just a moment. So think about what is it that I'm actually doing? And by the way, I just want to say, give yourself some grace, because that category of one and the credibility statement are probably the hardest things to arrive at. And why is that so hard for us to do? It's because we live and breathe all of our ideas and experiences all the time. So it's so hard to kind of distill those down. I will have a worksheet that I'm happy to share at the end of this session, which just kind of takes you that next level deeper, so you can really start to think about, all right, how on earth do I start to put this together? And
Awesome.
I also will say again that the way we figure out these things are in community, and you have an incredible community at your fingertips. So feel free, use somebody that you know that you trust and bounce ideas off them, see how they resonate and things like that. Number five, a clear call to action. What do you want people to do when they land on your website? So they see it's you, they see your picture, they see your credibility statement, they see your category. What do you want them to do next? Do you want them to watch your TEDx talk video? So maybe you have a little button and then it pops up with your TEDx talk. Maybe you want them to immediately be directed to your contact form or your contact page. So you have book Alex to speak or something like that. And Alex, sorry, I keep picking on you because your window is just right underneath me right there. um, so number five is that clear call to action.
Can
Number
I ask a
six
quick
is
question there, though, Nikki, on
yes,
the call to
yes, yes,
action?
yes, yes.
So this is interesting because um, what I want folks to start to think about is that your website is not it's not a brochure of like all of the things or collection of all of the credibility. It's a tool to get people to take an action, right? And when you think about it in those terms, you can start cutting. Like when we think of like building our speech and we're like, oh, but I want this in there and I want that, and there was this really cool story. Maybe I can put that in there. No, we gotta stick to the roadmap because people will be distracted very quickly. And what you want when somebody comes to your website, they're there because they're there for some reason. They were either directed there or they searched you and now they've found you. So in addition to making it ridiculously easy to contact you, we need to make it very clear what action you want them to take. And I would think for most of us that is to book you, right? To or maybe we're not saying book me, we're saying let's start the conversation. Let's have a discovery call. Let me help you with this problem that you have. So that's another way to make it easy is to say like, well, I don't know if I want to hire you yet, but I do have a problem that I need help with. Well, let's have a chat and see if I'm the right person, right? Does that sound right, Nikki, in terms of like how can we direct them to the next step?
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes we do build platforms for speakers where we have two calls to action. In fact, I'll share some examples and you kind of see what I'm talking about. So you might have maybe someone thinks you might be the person for them, but they just need to see your video first.
Yeah.
And so, you might want to click, and then you might also have a button beside that says, yeah, I loved what you said, start the conversation, or, get in touch, find out, uh, inquire about Elizabeth's availability. That one's a bit more of a mouthful.
Mm,
A longer button, but yeah, you've completely got the right idea. So
cool.
let me share some more examples, just because it's fun to do that and to get a sense of what the heck I'm talking about here. And again, to your point, these are professional speaker websites, and I'm not sharing these with you so you get kind of comparisonitis and things like that. But this is ultimately sort of what we're aspiring to be more like. And you can even do this with a one-page website, with a multi-page website. So all good there. All right, let's start with Alison because we began with her. So we have the speak with impact, we have her credibility statement, and now she really speaks to the outcomes: create powerful, persuasive communicators who unite and uplift teams and transform your organization from the inside out. She has two buttons: play speaker video, book Alison. Nice and simple,
Mm.
right? Let me just grab another one here. Shireen, so we just launched this lovely website. She talks about the people IQ advantage, talks that embolden leaders, teams, and individuals to create healthy cultures where people and organizations flourish. Some of these are kind of a mouthful. Um, and then book Shireen, watch Shireen in action.
I'm curious, Nikki, when like when you click there,
Mm.
watch the video, does it go to a separate page or just pop up? Okay. And
It
then
pops up right there. Yeah.
what's the call to action on that page? Is there one? The
No,
video?
so it actually so it doesn't take you elsewhere. You stay right there.
Good.
And
Okay.
ideally, you want to use something like Vimeo for that, because if you can, because the only reason I say that is because YouTube sometimes will then start to promote another speaker right underneath.
Yeah,
She also has
right.
this book Shireen. option that bumps you down to the contact form at the bottom of a page. Um, so we also want to have number 6, and I'll go through these again, a byline that tells us who you are. And so, we've seen, okay, we're on Alison's site, we can kind of see what she's all about, but don't be afraid to really drive it home. So we have Alison Shapiro, keynote speaker, best-selling author, leadership communication expert. So maybe there's a trio of things that you really want to be known for. With Lakita, she's a founder and CEO of the Clear Communications Academy. She's spoken in 50 countries. With Milena, she's also a founder and CEO. But what are those key things that you really want to lead with? Maybe you can kind of claim a sort of expertise in a certain area. Maybe you do have a few things that you're just really proud of. And by the way, if you have delivered a TEDx talk, you can definitely lead with that. That's such a big credibility piece. So many of my clients will lead with that. TEDx speaker, sometimes 2 times TEDx speaker or 3 times TEDx speaker. I don't know. Some of you really like doing these TEDx talks. No, they have such a great credibility piece. So, and then, yes. So we have number 1, your contact information. Number 2, you. Number 3, your category of 1. Number 4, your credibility statement. Number 5, a clear call to action. Number 6, a byline that tells us who you are. And then finally, and by the way, we haven't even scrolled down yet. This is all at the top of your site. Finally, we have a space. If you have them, you might have some logos that you're really proud of. Maybe you have some press logos or something like that. You might have a great testimonial. That's the piece to feature next. So you can see, that of course, again, we're talking about professional speakers here. So they have a ton of great credibility. With Alison, she has some of these great press samples. If you don't have those pieces yet, do not worry. In fact, I think with Nina, she does have some pieces, but she's moving more into the corporate speaker space, and she didn't really have any company logos. Just run with what you have. And if you don't have them yet, don't worry, you'll get them in the future. So all of those 7 things are just the top of your website. Are we ready to plunge into the middle part of the site? Which, by the way, I'm not going to take as long. That top piece is so important because it's where people land first. So we need to grab them, help them understand exactly what it is that you do, and prevent them from clicking elsewhere. So now we've got them. They're engaged. They're excited to learn more. So we want to move them down now into the next portion of your website. And this is
I
when
love
you
it.
get,
Let's take a
this is
break
when
real
you,
quick.
yeah, absolutely. Love
Because
it.
I want
Let's
to
do
make
that.
sure that if there's questions that we can answer those here. So, yeah, first of all, I just want to reiterate that, everything that's shown there really are the nuts and bolts of a website. Like if you just had those elements on the front, like you'd be doing great, right? The speaker
Yes.
reel is there. What you talk about is there. The heart then of like any booker is going to be like, all right, well, I really need to understand what the content is that you're sharing and what the outcomes will be. And that's what's going to come next. However, just in those that we just discussed, I just want to check in with folks if there's any questions about those, and we can answer them as we go. So Alex says this will all supercharge conversations and start more conversations. Will we cover how to drive more qualified traffic to the site? Oh, he's deep diving. Oh yeah.
Deep diving already. I love it.
Before we
But
go there though,
yeah, sure.
yeah, is there just about what we covered, is there any questions from folks on the call so that we can make sure we get those answered? Alex, TM, Elizabeth, Veronica. Okay, we're good. All right, let's go ahead and jump forward, Nikki.
All right. Awesome. So, have you ever heard someone say about your brand that, oh, it's not about you? I always like to say, well, actually, it is about you, especially if we're talking about your website and your talk and hiring you to speak. Of course, it's about you. Um, Tim says, why do you say my name that way?
Because
I,
he says his name that way. TM.
my brother's name is Timothy. Um, anyway, so we really want to, even though that is not strictly true, because your brand is just as much about you as it is your audience. The next section now is your chance to share that you understand your audience and really showcase that. And so one of the questions that I like to ask for this section is, when you think about the people that you most want to speak in front of, or the people that you most want to hire you to speak, what are they struggling with and how are they feeling? Because I think we can spend a lot of time getting into the micro dynamics of exactly who an ideal client is and what their age is and what newspapers they read, all of that kind of stuff. That's all interesting information. But ultimately, let's think more in terms of the psychodynamics. What is it that they're struggling with? How are they feeling? And now this next section is your chance to speak to that. I think, by the way, that this is so often a section that people skip over because it's a little bit hard, right? Sometimes it's difficult to find the right language to use, but I really do encourage you to lead with empathy, and just think about, okay, how do I really want to speak to that? What do I know that what is the question that they're asking a ton of the time? What is the thing that they most want to solve or know or do? And with that understanding, what do I want them to know? And so this can be your opportunity to connect back to your category of one, or you might want to think about it in terms of kind of your hot take on a specific challenge that they're having. What is your perspective? What is your solution? How do you want them to think differently about what's possible for them? So people often will skip straight past this and just write about themselves. And we do want to hear about you. We want to have that bio section. We'll talk about that in just a sec. But before you do that, let's really think about positioning things in a way that your audience can understand. This is really going to ensure that they feel seen and heard and understood. I'm going to share some examples real quick.
Great.
And let me start with Alison. So she has, in a rapidly changing world, how do you set leaders up to thrive so your organization stays future ready? And that last part is in bold capitals because she knows the thing that they want to figure out the most is staying future ready. And then she brings in her kind of hot take or perspective. Here's what you do. You give them the communication skills they need to sound as capable as they already are. You help them practice and repeat until the way they speak reflects their true potential. And you build the confidence they need to go from being in the room to leading the meeting. This is how Alison talks about what she does. She's like, here's what you've got to do. 1, 2, 3. Like, she knows that. She's the expert in this. So this is where she gets to kind of showcase that and connect it directly to her audience's challenge. And then we even have a little bit here that connects us back to the top and that category of one, that speak with impact. That's what it means to speak with impact. And this is what Alison teaches leaders all over the world. You'll notice that a lot of the examples I share are third person. People often ask me, do I write this in the first person or the third person? It's entirely up to you. This can still be as impactful if you use the first person. Sometimes it feels less awkward if it's third person, but I really give you permission to play with that and see what you prefer. Simon Keith, he talks about, and I'm going down to this section on his website, but he talks about when your leaders are determined to be great, nothing can stand in their way. Now he knows, next sentence, not fear, not negativity, not other people. He knows that fear is something that often holds leaders back. He knows that it can often be negativity or other people. So his hot take is, when they are determined to be great, it's all about greatness, then nothing can stand in their way. Instead, they become relentless in reaching their goals. They tackle every challenge head first. Here's a soccer player, little play on that. And they do whatever it takes to achieve the unthinkable. Building this kind of culture is Simon Keith's speciality. So it doesn't have to look like this. Obviously, there's a lot of design that has gone into some of these examples. But what do we need to know about?
I love that one.
What does your audience need to know? And then how can you just really bring that home, that you're the one to help them out with that? And draw on your expertise, draw on some of the key points that you make during your talk. This is where you get to kind of align everything. I always say that when you deliver a talk, or especially a TEDx talk, that can sort of be the smaller container, but then when you start to think about your website, you expand it to fit the homepage, and then start to think about how you can just really pull that apart and weave in some of those different elements so there's true alignment.
Yeah, the other thing I'd like to add here is that sometimes we don't know exactly like what I love about the example that you just shared was like it's super clear, right? And
Mhm.
concise and like it flows and it just feels like a conversation. And if you're on the other end of that and you need this problem solved, you're just like, yeah, total this guy, right? So how do we get there? And this is a question that because we can, again, we can often compare like, oh, well, this person who's been doing it. Part of getting there is just consistently putting the messaging out, looking at what you already say, and what's resonating with people. One other option is to start talking to the very people that could book you and start asking them what their pain points are. Get on calls with them. Just ask like, "Hey, could I bend your ear for a half hour and in return I'll give you a free coaching session or whatever." Like, and then you ask a series of questions that leads you to the language that you want to get to. And if you do a handful of those, you'll start seeing patterns emerge. And this is what you want because then you're tapping into the language and the pain points of the very people that want to book someone like you to solve their problem.
I absolutely agree with that. I went through many years ago a customer discovery course where I live here in Rhode Island, and it was uncomfortable because I had to get onto calls and have conversations with people that I wanted to work with. But it was such a great exercise. I also want to say that we live in a day and age, thank goodness, where certain things can take a matter of seconds. And of course, I'm talking about AI. So if you are someone that's dabbled with or comfortable with using something like Chat GPT, or I
Yeah,
really like Claude AI, ask it some questions and say, hey, this is the audience that I think I most want to serve, or this is the industry where I
that's right.
really want to make my mark. And then ask it, what are some of those top challenges that I could really speak to that tie to my area of expertise? And let it connect the dots for you. Sometimes it just feels so nice on the brain to have something else just start
Yes.
to kind of take all this input and put it together in a way that makes sense. So that has saved me so much time. I know so
Yes.
many others who have used tools like that to really
Yeah, it's
expedite
getting
this whole
so
process.
good. It's getting so good and what it does super well is language, right? And so you could even take the transcript of these discovery calls and then feed it to ChatGPT or whatever and say, can you pull out the patterns that are emerging, the problems that are consistent in the language that it's using? And then you could just start trimming it down from there.
Yeah, and I always like to think about it in terms of a human plus machine approach. And I stole that from a futurist that I worked with because that's how she talks about AI in the future. But this idea that we can use AI to expedite our process of discovery and kind of get us places sooner, but also don't count yourself out of the equation. So make sure to kind of query what it says, to push back and to trust your own instincts as well in terms of what feels true and what feels right. And don't lose your own words and your own expertise or strengths or unique ways of seeing things that sometimes can get lost in that process. So very much use it as a tool and a companion of sorts, but yeah, don't underestimate or dismiss your own amazingness and brilliance. All right, so that's that really important second section. Now we can finally get to number three, which is who you are. So this is when you do get to write about you, and most people that I've worked with have an idea that this should go on their homepage. Sometimes I go and do a website audit for somebody, and I don't know how amazing they are until I get to their about page. And it's like, oh my gosh, I really had to dig through this. Especially if you're doing a one-page website, we need to get to that as soon as possible. And by the way, this doesn't have to be super complex. I'm going to share with you one example here. Um, Let me share with you Shireen's website. So this is her second section, which is talking about those her audience's most pressing challenges. She talks about the fact that turnover never lies. It's kind of a catchphrase of hers, and that speaks to the specific challenge that her audience is having. This is her unique sort of hot take. Building healthy cultures where everyone is energized to contribute requires hope that things can be different and the skills to make it so. And then we go into, hello, I'm Dr. Shireen McHenry. And then she has this incredible first paragraph, former graduate professor with a PhD in counseling turned full-time certified speaking professional. You could really play with that and have it be whatever you want it to be. It might be TEDx speaker, author, or expert in this specific area. Maybe you're a researcher. I don't know, but think about the things that you're most proud of. And again, maybe these are pulled down from that byline that we talked about earlier, and lead with that. Don't be afraid to tell people who you are. And then, she has this little section. I can tell you what does and doesn't work when it comes to people because I've spent a lifetime studying them. So now she's bringing in her truth, her expertise. As a kid who offered marital advice before I could drive, side note, that's a fun little anecdote. That's not even any kind of qualification she has, but she literally she saw her parents struggling and she started to kind of give them advice as a kid, which is kind of an interesting piece that I pulled in here. I learned early on to pay attention to what makes people tick. After decades of observing, learning, and teaching, here's what I know. When we equip leaders and teams to interact in healthier ways, people and organizations flourish. Let me share with you Nina's. Nina's is a little bit longer,
I
but
wanna
she
I
says,
wanna quickly just
yeah,
add
go for it.
something, Nikki. So it's
Please,
interesting to
yeah.
me because a lot of
Mm.
us will put and maybe in some in different industries like it makes sense, but that bio piece will come right after the hero image instead of that
Yes,
middle
people do
section,
that
right?
all the time.
Yeah,
And listen, you can do that, but what's most important to you? I think in this day and age, especially, say someone has three speakers that they're choosing from, and so that they know that you're all, a big deal. You know what you're doing, you know what you're speaking about, you're expert in a certain area, they loved your TEDx talk. But now you've got to share that you understand where they're coming from. So it's
right,
kind of like this little dance, a
right.
little bit like the dances we were doing at the top of this call. But like, how can you dance with your audience and help them feel really seen and heard and understood? And so I think that second section is so important before you dive into this.
I agree.
Again, when we talked about those 7 elements at the top of your site, you did a lot of work there already. So you had
Yeah,
who you are, you had you had all these different
right.
elements. So you've kind of given us a little taste, and now you're pulling us down the site. So it's
Yeah, we
almost
got
like
to
you're
get to
telling
what
this
I'm,
story.
what am I looking for? And so, yeah,
Yes.
that makes total sense. Okay, cool. Love it.
Yeah. So so really think about it in terms of you are, whenever you start a story, it always starts with that sort of inciting incident. So that's almost the previous section when you're speaking about your audience's challenges. And now you're explaining why you're the guide, why
Right,
you can get them from A to B. So that's the next section. And then we can talk about, all right, what's the actual solution here? And there's a few different ways that you could tackle this. So this could be really how you do what you do in terms of your methodology or your approach. Or you might want to go straight into, okay, here are the 3 talks that I deliver, or here's my signature talk. And you can book it if you click this button. But you really want to tell them now, all right, so you understand that I get you. I know what you're going through, what you're struggling with, how you're feeling. You understand why it makes sense that you should probably book me to speak. Actually, not probably. Let's take that word out of the equation. And then, and now, here's how you can work with me, or here's how I do this work. So let me share with you again some examples. Let me see. I'll try and change it up a little bit. All right. Here is Jim Massey. So his whole thing is business as us. I'm going to scroll on down to the good stuff. He helps people get to business as us through 3 steps. We choose clarity over certainty, empower over enforce, take action over inaction. So that's a really nice way to break it down. And then further down, he has in that sort of how he does things section, he has 3 keynotes that he wants
right.
to deliver. Again, if you have a 1-pager, you can literally have a paragraph for each of the talks, or a paragraph for the talk that you want to deliver. And again, then that specific call to action to get them to take that next step. Let me share with you. Shireen is a great example of this. So she talks about when, and by the way, this is all out of her mouth. She just has so many good little catchphrases. In each talk I deliver at least three life-changing pieces of information. So this is how she does it. Powerful insights, life-changing strategies, timeless principles. And then she leads down to, okay, and here's how you get access to those through each of these talks that I deliver. Now she has quite a few. So that's really how you want to think about the next section. Any questions about this section before I close this out here?
I think I'll just add, you know, depending on what industry you're in, when you get into like, okay, here are the keynotes, right? Here are the options. First of all, I wouldn't have more than three options. And you might have one that you really are proud of, and you put that like front and center, and the others should relate in some way. Not always, right? So for example, when I was speaking all the time in the higher education field, there was there were certain buckets that people had money for, right? To like solve certain problems. And as an administrator, I knew I could speak to several of them, but I also had like the main one that I loved doing, and that was like my wheelhouse. So it's okay if you have multiple expertise. Just know that that's going to be difficult then when you're communicating that core message of who you are and what you do. So sometimes it makes sense, but mostly you want it to relate. The other thing I'll say is that when you're communicating the outcomes, again, you have to know exactly who's hiring you or would be hiring you. For some of these folks, they really don't know a whole lot. They just know that they have to solve this problem, and here's one way to do it, and we're going to bring somebody in, and you seem great. Others will know really the like keenly your space and will know the nuances of it, and they need to know how you will speak to their specific audience and solve it in a different way. And so it would make sense to get more in the weeds in your outcomes there. So just again, really knowing who your audience is and who's booking you.
Yeah, amazing advice. Amazing. Love it, love it, love it. And yeah, I agree. Try and keep everything as aligned as possible. So you might have something that you do that you offer. Maybe it's kind of a side business that has no relation to what you talk about. Maybe just think about letting that live elsewhere and just keeping things super duper focused. You might offer some spin-off workshops or coaching or consulting. You might have a program or a course that's kind of related to the same topic. So
Mm.
that's a great thing to feature there. And I love the rule of threes. If in doubt, choose three things to run with. I don't know why. There's some brain science behind that, but we humans love the rule of threes. It just makes things very memorable. Um, so Alex has a question: is an audience or market of business leaders in 20 million revenue companies, 100 employees plus, still too broad? How niche should we target? The question I would ask you there is, that's great clarity that you know that that's the specific audience that you want to be targeting. But I want you to now be thinking about the decision makers inside those companies. What are they struggling with? How are they feeling? It might feel like it's such a simple approach, but it's going to start to get you into their heads of what are they dealing with day to day, and what kinds of decisions are they being faced with? What are they grappling with? What are they just exhausted by? Because that's where you can then bring in your unique expertise. All right, so we have number one, your hero banner. And how many elements did we have for the hero banner? Does anyone remember? Seven. Seven. That's seven finger. Okay, okay, yep.
Tim says
So
Tim says seven. He says seven.
oh yeah, well I did say seven like that, and then realized I only had six fingers up. So start with the hero banner. Then number two, your audience's most pressing challenge. Number three, who you are. Allow yourself to shine. And then number four, your solution. Before number five, if you can, give us a taste. So I just want to think about, are there people who have heard you speak and just were wowed by it? Share those testimonials, share a whole bunch of them, have them rotating on the screen if you can. If you have a video, you might have linked to it above, but put that TEDx talk again. Make sure we don't miss it. Give us that taste. Make sure that we can kind of get a true experience of who you are and what you're all about. You might have a book. That's amazing. Let's not hide that away. Let's make sure we have that. Or you might have a freebie. You might have a free download, or you might have an email list or something like that. So think about the ways that you want to get people to take that next step, or just give them that taste so they take the next step. And that's essentially it. But I do want you to be thinking about all the way through at this step, what do I want people to do next? Do I just want them to scroll and keep reading? Or at this point, do I feel like they could be at the precipice of a decision? They might be convinced enough, in which case, do I now link them to book a discovery call? Do I now suggest very gently or very firmly that they get in touch with me and learn about my availability? Any questions on that piece in terms of what lives there? Does that make sense?
All good. Love it.
Awesome. Speaking about freebies, I have a couple things, and I actually do have a slide deck for this bit, and it will just take me 2 seconds. Because you all have been such a wonderful
Yeah, everybody
audience.
wants that checklist.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay, so first of all, the the first 10 people to email me at nikki@raisedvoices.com, don't forget the hyphen, get a free website audit. So if you have any kind of website up right now and you want me to take a look, I'll take a look at it for free, no obligation. We'll just get on a call and I'll kind of talk you through some things that you can really do to elevate what you're doing right now. That's number one. Number two is if you are ready to go that next step deeper that we talked about, to explore your category of one and how the heck do I talk about all that I do? Because you are brilliant humans and it's difficult sometimes to encapsulate that. I want you to email support@raised-voices.com with the subject line free download, and we'll get that PDF out to you. I'll give you, I'm still sharing that, but let me just give you a little taste of, well, now I've messed myself up. Oh, here we go. I'll just give you a little taste of what that looks like so you can see what you get in. So it's all about how to uncover your unique advantage. And then we really go into some of the key things that you can be thinking about that will start to unlock some of these ways that you can talk about the work that you're doing. Any questions? I'm really hopeful that there are some questions. Thank you for resharing those email addresses. And I also hope that some of you take me up on the website audit, because I'd love to. And there's never any website shame where I'm concerned. So you can come, I've seen all the websites, right? So we're really going to be trying to figure out what can we do with what you already have to just help kick it up a notch. Sometimes you don't have a huge budget or can't invest a ton in it right now. So how can you just get it kind of moving in the right direction? Also, we did talk about AI earlier. We were talking the other day about the fact that there are platforms out there now that will build websites for you. Of course, I'm biased and I would say it's not quite to the standards that I would like it to be, but there might be
Yeah.
things that you can do if you're unsure, if you want some hacks. Again, please consider me an open resource and reach out anytime.
Well, let's go ahead and go back to Alex's question about
Yes.
how do we drive traffic and what tips do you have any there on that end? I know that might not be exactly your expertise, but it's in your wheelhouse, right, Nikki?
Yeah, I came to the States in the first place with a marketing job, and I always say I back then I wore all the hats. So SEO has definitely been in my wheelhouse at some point. I always like to think about SEO as writing for humans. And so if you want people to find you because you are a culture and leadership speaker or employee engagement speaker, or I'm just making up some ideas. Know what it is that you want to be known for. Remember, we started this entire call by asking that question: what do you want to be known for? When you're writing your homepage or your website, on each page, are you really bringing that home? Do you have words or a phrase that really defines that so that people can easily find you? I think that's the main piece. There are other things that you can think about doing. So I know some speakers who they maybe specialize in multiple different industries or sectors. So they might have dedicated pages for each one of those. That's a little bit more complex. As a starting point, I would say just make sure that you're speaking directly to the audience that you most want to serve and support, and they'll find their way to you.
Yeah, what I would add to that, Alex, and this is probably nothing you don't already know, but nothing beats like organic traffic and people staying on your website for a consistent period of time, right? So like if you have things that they if you have content, make it available on your website and make them stay on your website to consume it, right? So for example, yes, you might have a YouTube channel, but you should also have a blog that has that has the video in there. So you might have a short blog that you write, and then you put the video in there, and then they would stay on your website and watch the whole video. That really helps, right? The other thing is you want to consistently produce content from your website. So a blog, right? Every month I happen to do a newsletter that points you to also a blog that I write. And what I can tell you is that it did nothing for me for a long time until it did. And so the consistency of that, and then people finding you and your Google juice, as I like to call it, just continues to increase and goes up the more consistent you are and the more content that you produce. And obviously the more people that engage with it. So one of the cool things that I found out recently was like a blog that I wrote, gets shared by a bunch of TEDx organizers, and I had no idea. And it was about how to title your TEDx talk. Yeah, that's going to give me some good Google juice if like people that are in the field that I'm in or producing the thing that I want to help people produce are sharing it consistently. So stay consistent, give value, and that's going to happen organically. Of course, you can run Google ads and that sort of thing, but that's not right for every industry. And for speakers, I wouldn't say that makes a whole lot of sense, right? Because um, your buyer is not like a buyer that's going to, purchase a product in the same kind of way. So I don't think the ad spend makes that much sense, but that's a whole different path that we won't go down today. What else, folks? Well, I guess what I'll say, oh, Alec, what does booking buying journey look like for most speaking engagements? That's a good question. I'll take a crack at it here, and then Nikki, if you want to add some things to it. Yeah, I would view this again, this might be industry specific, but I'll speak to my experience, is that you want to stay top of mind. And that means producing content and just being out there and giving value, if that's a newsletter, if that's social media, et cetera. And then when people think of the topic that you speak on, you're the first name that comes to mind. So that's a lot of the speaking business is like, oh, we need a speaker for this thing. Oh, there's this person, right? There's a lot of that happens. One of the challenges in certain industries is that often uh, the there's turnover in the person who would be making that decision. So you're constantly rebuilding relationships. But once you establish a relationship with an organization, you should continue following up and sending stuff and and know if there has been turnover so that you can continue to build that relationship. For example, in higher education, it used to be all staff members that staff and faculty that would book speakers, right? And very then maybe a student would have a say in it because they were on a committee or something like that. That has shifted significantly. So it's kind of like 50-50, where students now have the budget themselves and they're the ones making the decisions. In some institutions, it's more like 80-20 students, right? Again, that makes it difficult because students graduate. And so you're always rebuilding those relationships. However, if they're a part of an organization like a fraternity or a sorority, you can continue communication and know those things and know the turnover and stay top of mind. This is transferable to other industries as well. Next question. From a website standpoint, we focus on the actual audience messaging and not speak to the buyer. Um,
This is
uh,
a great question.
yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Nikki.
No, no, go ahead if you had
Well, yeah, what I would
a take
say
on
is
this.
your website is meant for the buyer first and foremost. Um, are people going to find you that maybe are in your audience? Yes. And so that depends on how sophisticated you want your website to be and how you want them to interact with you, if that's buying your book, if that's following you, etc. However, a lot of that happens to me when you go and speak, you're speaking to your audience. So that's where you give your call to action, and that's where you ask them to do something. And then you have, really what you want is for them to be on your email list. And so own that audience in that way and direct them in that way. But you're not asking the buyer to sign up for your email list. You're asking the buyer to book a call with you, to let's continue the conversation. Does that help, Alex?
Yeah, and I would say it's yeah, exactly that. It's kind of like this balancing act because you want to be incredibly mindful of your ultimate impact, which is on that audience. How are you going to inspire them, move them into action, teach them new things with this sort of mindfulness of that decision maker and how it's going to make their lives easier and be able to speak to both of these things. So it's really speaking to that decision maker as we talked about in the copy. I would really prioritize that, but make it clear that you understand their challenges and then how your methodology or your approach or your take or your expertise makes life a heck of a lot easier on them because you take them through these sort of key principles or you have this unique take that's just going to help really switch up their mindset. So a bit of both, but yeah, that's what I would lead with, that understanding of the ultimate impact, but tie it to that decision maker so they really understand what it means for them.
Amazing. Yeah, this is an interesting debate. Like even at the highest levels of like the most sophisticated websites, there's an argument about should we have more than one audience? And basically people say you can have a max of two, but one is better. And so because people aren't, fiddling around with websites, you just want them to like go in there, know what's going on, take an action, and then get them, then you follow up, et cetera. So
And you will see that especially internet personalities or people who have really large followings, they've really universalized their message to the utmost degree. So they're really almost talking to everybody who has these same challenges. And that's really, really effective. I would guess for most of you, it helps to be more specific at this stage when you have that goal of getting booked and potentially even paid to speak. So being more specific, speaking to those decision makers is just going to help facilitate that first conversation. And you can kind of take it from there, build your reputation from there and build up to the level that you want to be at.
all right, folks, we've come to our time. Please, hit Nikki up, take her up on all these amazing freebies and offers. She's amazing. She's an expert. Utilize the expertise at your fingertips. So let's all give her one more round of applause, please. Thank you so much, Nikki,
Plus for
for
you
being
too.
here.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, really, really.
And
Pleasure.
Nikki, I really need you to put your shoulders into it this time. Everybody, come on. Woo! Thanks for joining us for the monthly training, everybody. Have a good rest of the week. Love you guys. Bye.